great flavors.
With Kirsten Sinema running in a highly watched race for U.S. Senate, the seat she is leaving could provide an opening for Republicans. And one man trying to flip Arizona's CD9 is Dr. Steve Ferrara. He is a veteran and a medical doctor who says he has a prescription for health care and immigration, among other issues. He also has a request for one of the other potential candidates in the race. And we'll ask him what he wants from Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton tonight on Politics Unplugged. Good evening. I am political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. And joining us now is Dr. Steve Ferrara. Now, he's trying to flip this this Democrat seat. You're trying to flip it back into Republican hands. Now, we'll get more into those issues right now, but I do want to start off with the latest school shooting we taped Friday mornings. We're hearing more and more details. They're still emerging. We don't know a whole lot about this, but this is something that has been a big national debate. Do you have a prescription to cure this disease, this school shootings that we seem to be having every few months? What's your plan to do something with that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to send, my condolences and sympathy and, God give comfort to the victims and their families in Santa Fe, Texas. But yeah, that's a great question. And what I think we really need to get to, there's a lot of talk about sort of the end points of these things, but what I really look at is, why do we have so many homicidal teenagers in our schools? And I think it's multifactorial. As you know, I'm a physician. And when you look at things like mental health care, you look at things like technology, whether it's social media, whether it's other things in our society and our culture, why these kids are wanting to do this stuff. And we really need to get at the causes. And that's one of the things. I have a 14 and a 17-year-old. So this hits very close to home for me. And I will support any policies and any legislation that'll keep kids safer in school.
Well, what about gun control? What about restricting, closing the gun show loopholes that allows people to go buy, assault weapons? What about some of those things that other people have talked about? I mean, you're going to support some of those types of measures.
Right. And that gets back to kind of what I was just alluding to, which, the guns are a method to the madness, but it doesn't get to the source of the problem.
Well, it's guns that are shooting these kids.
Correct.
I mean, people are getting their hands on these weapons and killing these kids in big numbers. I mean, they enable.
Right. In London, in London has a higher murder rate than New York City. And they have. So that is not necessarily the solution. The solution is to get to why are our kids wanting to kill their classmates. That is the problem. And if we waved a magic wand and the guns went away tomorrow, these troubled kids would find other ways to do what they're doing. Well, so I think I think there's a big risk in saying, well, if we do something that we nibble at the edges and we don't actually get at the problem and we expect to have a different outcome. That's fundamentally the issue.
Yeah, but I mean, again, the guns are making it makes these types of incidents easier. If you get your hands on that type of weapon, I mean, why not do something to restrict access to people who shouldn't have these guns in the first place? You can do both. It doesn't have to be either or.
I think, and that's, you're alluding to a very important point. This is going to be a multifactorial solution. We need to harden our schools. We need to enforce the laws we have on the books better. We need to make it where people with mental illness, people that shouldn't have guns, don't have guns. But we also need to talk about things like what are the factors in our society that are making, when I grew up here in Phoenix, graduated from Brophy in the 80s, we didn't have a lot of kids that were looking to try to kill other kids. We had issues at the time, but they were different. And we have to really take a hard look at that as why is this an epidemic?
So what would you propose if you were in the Congress today?
So, like I said, we need to support the laws we have on the books. We need to help law enforcement. I do think we need to harden our schools. And I think, I'm glad that the...
So you want more cops in schools, more guns in schools?
I'm saying we need to harden our schools with probably, again, how are kids getting guns into the schools? When we were worried about airport security, we found ways to secure the airports. We need to be able to secure the schools.
So more guns in schools? Would you support putting more guns in schools, arming teachers, or more school resource officers?
I think the latter is a much better way to go. I think this is, again, arming teachers, I don't think is, I was in Afghanistan, so I was armed all the time, and I know what it's like to have to walk around armed because of that sort of thing, and I don't think that's the role that we want our teachers to be playing.
All right, now let's move on. Let's remind people here the district that you're looking at was created back in 2012 after that 2010 census. Now, Kyrsten Sinema has represented that district that entire time. Now, it is centered in the East Valley, Tempe, Mesa, Chandler, parts of Phoenix. After supporting Sinema now for 3 terms, let's ask, why do you think the voters out there want to vote for a Republican candidate instead of a Democrat?
I think the district, again, it's a very common sense, practical district, and I think that's what people are looking for. It's less about ideology and more about getting things done. And I think when they look at my record, that's what they're going to see. They're going to see that this is, hey, Steve Ferrara is a guy who served 25 years in the Navy. He's a surgeon. I mean, I'm a problem solver. I'm somebody who fixes things. I'm a public servant. I'm doing this because I care about the country. I've been in public service my whole life as a military officer and as a combat veteran, and that's going to resonate very strongly with people in CD9. It's not it's a swing district. The plurality of voters are independents. They want somebody who's going to get things done.
Now, the presumptive Democratic candidate that's going to jump in this race, who hasn't filed yet, is Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton. Now, you've had some problems with how he's running his race, or not really running his race. Explain.
So, we're asking the question. So for 8 months now, Greg, the mayor has said he's going to run for Congress, but he's stayed in the mayoral role. And what that has done is it's allowed him to get contributions and fill his war chest for Congress with contributions from folks that have business with the city, like lobbyists or developers. And is that really right? And also, I live in Phoenix, so every time all of us who live in Phoenix, every time we pay a sales tax, every time we pay our property tax, we're sitting there and we're funding, his support system while he's running for Congress. We're also funding the Sheraton debacle, $200 million of Phoenix taxpayer money that went down the tubes. Greg Stanton is a tax and spend liberal mayor. He raised taxes on food. Yeah. There's no more regressive tax than food.
But to push back on this, I mean, Phoenix is doing really well. I mean, there's if you look at the economic factors in the city, I mean, the development has sprung up. I mean, the city seems to be thriving right now, and it's done so, while he's been mayor. I don't know how much credit he deserves on that, but how can you say he's been a bad mayor?
I'm talking about, first of all, you asked about how he's run his campaign. I think it's, we're talking about trying to, clean up Washington, D.C. So here's a guy who's held onto his seat for 8 months while he's been running for Congress, which is clearly a conflict of interest. And do you want somebody like that to go back to Washington, D.C., where the temptation to do that on such a larger scale is so much greater? And I think the voters know that. The voters are looking for people that are going to Washington to serve the voters and not to serve themselves.
Well, he wouldn't be the first politician to stick in office while he's eyeing another one and raising contribution. I was going to say, what makes this any more egregious?
Well, it doesn't make it right. Exactly. Okay. And I think that's the whole point, is we're trying to turn the page on that kind of political environment and that's what people are tired of. People are tired on both sides of the aisle. People are tired of politicians who are self-serving, who leave richer than they came in, who go there to feather their own nest. They're looking for people that, like me, that are, we have fewer veterans in Congress than we've ever had in the nation's history. People know that veterans are folks that are problem solvers. Veterans are folks that go there to get things done and to put the country before self.
Okay, let's move on to another issue. Obviously, always a hot-button issue in Arizona and almost any race, immigration. Give us your views on that and give us any solutions that you may be proposing.
Sure. So immigration, we're lucky in America that people still want to come to America, but we need a holistic immigration policy that keeps us secure and supports our economy. So first and foremost, and it needs to be legal. So those are, fundamental. When you start a sentence with illegal, you've kind of finished the sentence. So we need a holistic immigration policy that supports our economy and keeps our border secure, keeps drugs out, keeps human trafficking out. So when I go to Congress, I'm going to support those kind of policies. I want to support pro-growth, pro-economic growth immigration policies that support American workers, and that, just today. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, where are you on the docket recipients? A lot of people in your party say, they should be removed, from the country, despite the fact that they were brought here as young children, no fault of their own.
Right. So I think, like the president, a path to permanent legal status I'm not in favor of amnesty. I think there can be avenues for citizens.
So you boot them out of the country?
I wouldn't. No, I said permanent legal status.
Okay, permanent legal status.
Permanent legal status.
But no
citizenship is reserved for people if you serve in the military. Perhaps if you're a first responder, other things where you're serving the public good, then maybe that gives you an avenue. You know, we do that a lot. I'm a Navy guy, and we did that a lot in the Navy we had a lot of folks, we had a program with the Philippines where people could come here from the Philippines, serve in the Navy, and become citizens. It was a great program, very successful program, allowed us to have Clark Air Force Base in Subic Bay and become a great ally. And those are the kind of programs that work. We did them for decades. They work. Those are really patriotic people.
And I also want to ask you, too, the president has been taking some heat. He appeared recently at a meeting where he referred to immigrants as, quote, animals. Now, it was within a discussion of MS-13. Your thoughts on his language and choice of words there, your thoughts on the president?
You know, what the president's choice of words are his own. And I think, you know, and I did catch a little of that, and I don't think he's referring to, I certainly would never refer to immigrants as animals. I'm from an immigrant family. My grandfather came here.
What he said wrong? Was it wrong?
I don't know exactly what he said. So
you didn't see.
I've heard it, yeah, but I didn't see it firsthand. And I think what he was referring to, again, what I'm running on is my words. I'm not running on my candidacy is not a referendum on what the president says. I don't think immigrants are animals. Like I said, I don't think my grandfather was an animal. He came here as a stowaway on a ship from Italy when he was 8 years old, celebrated his birthday on the...
It sounded a lot like a DACA recipient.
Well, it was different in 1904.
But it sounded exactly like a dreamer that came over here as a young kid.
And here I am running for Congress.
And he was able to become a citizen.
And here I am running for Congress.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for that, but for this segment, we do have more Politics Unplugged coming up just ahead. Stick with us.
We have the Scottsdale woman who already has a beautiful home. And of course, she just wants to make it more beautiful. When she hears about the home show, a light goes off.
I would hope that everyone in there was reputable.
She comes across one vendor who kind of catches her eye. But the work he does is very shoddy, not up to code. She's already handed over $20,000. Eventually, it gets to the point where he's just stopped showing up. She wants something done. That's why she came to Trainer's Eye.
Really? Wednesday at 9 on 3TV.
Hi, I'm Todd Sanders with the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce. Economic development is critical to Arizona. We're uniting the Valley's top business leaders to help our economy. Make an investment in your business. Join the Chamber today.
I would never suggest going through the insurance company because they never have your best interests at heart. One call, that's all, and that's all it took. I would definitely refer somebody to learn and enroll.
Call 977-1900.
I used to think people who complained about whiplash were full of it. Then it happened to me. The other car came out of nowhere and wham! My neck and lower back ached nonstop. Look, I hate going to doctors, but emergency chiropractic was great. Straightforward and no nonsense. They even waited for my claim to settle. Best call I ever made.
Emergency chiropractic, the kind of care you want today.
Buckle up.
I'm David Giz, owner of Imagine Backyard Living. Have you ever imagined owning a jacuzzi hot tub? Let us show you how hot tub ownership will change your life and just how easy it can be. Stop by our showroom today and imagine the possibilities.
TitleMax makes it easy to turn your title into cash. Just go to TitleMax.com. Find out how much you can get.
Using TitleMax.com, I got $1,400.
$3,200.
TitleMax.com got me $9,700.
Best of all, most credit types are approved. Next time you need cash, try TitleMax for rate. Try TitleMax for the amount you need. Find out why so many people are saying, I got my title back with TitleMax.
Get your title back with TitleMax.
At Trucks Only, we're saying thank you with our annual Amazing Customer Appreciation Event. Get a great deal on a new ride and get your choice of amazing free custom upgrades. Buy in May and get more. Your home of a lifetime engine warranty. Go to trucksonly.com.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It has been a challenging year for Governor Ducey so far. He weathered a statewide teacher walkout and delivered money for teachers, but a plan to overhaul Arizona water laws and new guidelines for school safety fell short. So what does all of this mean in an election year? Joining us now with some insight is two veteran political reporters, Howie Fischer with Arizona Capital Media and Richard Ruelas with the Arizona Republic. Thanks a lot for stopping by, guys. I want to start with you. What kind of year did the governor have here at the legislature? Over 340 pieces of legislation signed, 23 vetoes, a 10-point-something billion-dollar budget. What stood out?
Well, yes, the governor was a wonderful year. It's a victory. Look, re-elect me in November. It comes down to perhaps an incomplete. I mean, there were some shining successes. He did pull everyone together early on the opioid issue and managed to come up with something. But if you look at what happened with education, he was sort of forced kicking and screaming into the whole issue of teacher pay. Still hasn't addressed much of the other issues in terms of how far behind we are. His school safety legislation went nowhere. I mean, it was gutted even before it got off of the 9th floor as he kept trying to appease certain folks, particularly from the right, and then it ended up going nowhere. So it was an average session, but there's a lot more that could have been done that really wasn't.
And Richard, I was going to...
The wild card was a bunch of teachers in red shirts that showed up around the Capitol and threatened to and then did effectuate a walkout that affected 800,000 students statewide. That did force his hand. There were things he did, the major things being the sort of 19 to 20% average teacher pay increase, and the extension of the 301 tax. Neither of those things were part of his State of the State address in January. He had a crisis on his hands, and he was able to.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, one of the things was, would this 20% raise or promise of the 20% raise even been put out there without this type of pressure?
Oh, hell no.
Because he says he was looking at it for a long time.
Oh, come on.
As late as March, he appeared on KTAR radio and was saying, there is no more money. I cannot give any more money. I can't do this faster without affecting public safety and other issues. Now, again, as the plan came out, he got some good financial news. He was able to get a license registration hike on all drivers. So that's where the money came from, but it definitely was not in the cards in March.
Well, a little bit is a little smoke and mirrors. We took a little money off of here, a little money off of there. But as you point out, in fact, as Richard and I, there's this wonderful video up on YouTube of Richard and I in the governor's face, and he's insisting, no, 1% is all we can do. It's maximum. The teachers ought to be grateful for that. And all of a sudden it was, oh, I looked at my polling numbers.
Well, I remember being there talking to the governor as well a couple days before he came out with this 20% proposal, and he said he was sticking with his plan.
Sure.
Yeah, of course he was. That KTR interview that we talked to him at was Tuesday. Wednesday, he says he gets this good news. Thursday is the press conference where he announces this.
I do want to talk about one thing, though, with this, because this has been a point of contention. We're starting to see that maybe some of these teachers aren't going to be getting the 20% raise. The governor's office, when the governor rolled this out, he promised every teacher was going to get a 20% raise.
He did say it's going to be at across the board, his words, raise, which meant if you were making X, you'd be making X plus 20%. I think, truthfully, and I don't know that it's such a bad idea, is why not leave flexibility to districts? Do the teachers making at the top really need another 20%? Perhaps you need to boost the rates at the bottom. But the fact that it was advertised as such, and even after it was passed, he kept talking about 20% across the board.
And I think there's going to be some discussion of pushing it to the districts. It's the district's fault. If you didn't get 20%, look at the districts. But the math shows it's based on an average salary. So mathematically, some are going to get more than they need, and some are going to get less than they need.
And that was the thing, was the marketing of this whole thing, the promise of the 20%. The promise, and if they don't get it, then they just say, well, it's off to the districts.
So it's more 20-ish by 2020.
All right, let's move on to another. We started off the show talking a little bit about this latest school shooting. Again, details still emerging out there. Now, I bring that up because, again, the governor, you guys mentioned this, had a school safety plan. He called it was an important piece of legislation. He called a press conference to talk about this whole thing. Why did this fall apart, and is this going to affect him later in the year, Richard?
The biggest element was what he thought was important was this stop order where you could have a gun taken away from someone that someone thought was mentally unstable, and I think that just has a tough time getting through the Republican legislature.
And well, let's talk about the fact, as I mentioned, he wanted things like personal liability. If you leave a gun where a child can get it, that should have been in there. That didn't even make it to the initial bill. Then it goes through the Senate, and Steve Smith says, well, stop orders are fine if, in fact, the police are asking for it. But the whole purpose, and the governor and his staff said this, was to allow parents, teachers, administrators, counselors to go into court and say, this person is dangerous. They talked about Jared Loeffner, who was known at Pima Community College for making threats. The Cruz kid down in Parkland, who was known for making the threats. And that was the whole purpose of the bill. And yet, the Republicans weren't going to go for it. And the fact is, I asked the governor, I said, well, wait, if you weren't going to get the Republican votes, there were Democrat votes to be had. That was in the issue of background checks. Oh, no, I'm not interested in that. So he basically boxed himself in.
Okay, look, we got about 30 seconds left here. I just want to ask you, and I'll start with you, Richard. Is the governor in better shape politically now than he was at the beginning of the session, or worse, or is it the same?
I would say the same or a little worse. I think he was placed in an awkward position of having to sort of make his policies match different than what his positions were in January.
I think he's actually a little better only because the 20%, while it's 19 and not really even that, I think he can say, look, I did deliver that, and that's going to be big in November.
All right, thanks a lot for stopping by. That's all the time we have, but we do have more Politics Unplugged just ahead.
Unimproved is a member of the Greater Phoenix Chamber for one reason, and that's because we want to contribute to Arizona business just like the Chamber does. I would absolutely recommend the Greater Phoenix Chamber to anyone in the Valley that wants to make incredible partnerships and really collaborate with like-minded businesses.
Diamonds, the forever gift. The Jewelry Exchange has half-carat anniversary bands for $2.99, 1-carat 2-stone rings $9.90, 1.5-carat 3-stone rings $19.90, and 1-carat studs just $3.99. All guaranteed to appraise for double. The Jewelry Exchange Phoenix.
Ready, set, save. Now through Memorial Day, up to 72% with free in-home shopping and no interest until 2020.
Plus, special active duty and first responder discounts through Memorial Day.
Call now.
Call 800-EXPRESS.
Weather with Royal Norman. Weeknights on 3TV.
A long time ago, I was in an accident, and I dealt with insurance companies by myself. I was ping-pong back and forth between people, not getting calls back, not getting responses, and it was a total nightmare. Don't call the insurance company. Call Lerner & Rowe.
Call 977-1900.
Like you, we get up and go to work every day. We're on the job, keeping you connected at home, at work, and to what matters most. Others count on you, so you can count on us. We're here restoring power quickly when storms hit, even fixing issues before they happen. We're making solar more reliable, investing in battery storage, and constantly updating the grid. We're here working 24/7, keeping Arizona on.
This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Remember that to love America is to love all Americans, because love has no labels.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It's now time to talk it out, and with us today is Barry Dill with First Strategic and Arizona Republic columnist Lori Roberts. Thank you both for joining us. And I want to start with you, Lori, get your reaction to the first segment. We've got a Republican who's filed his signatures. He's running in CD9. Presumably he's going to, if he wins this primary, he's going to be facing maybe Greg Stanton in this race. How's this race going to shake out?
Well, I think he is a strong Republican recruit. Good guy, has the right kind of credentials, wrong district. This is a district that Hillary Clinton took by 16% 2 years ago. And having just gone through a special election in a district that Trump took by 21% and watched Debbie Lesko eke out of the race with a 6% margin. That tells me that it's going to be very difficult in a more Democratic race for a Republican to pick up that seat.
Yeah, and he made some allegations or started slamming Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton, who is yet to resign his seat from mayor to run for this office. He's saying he's going out, he's using the power of that office to go out and raise money. Is this going to be an issue?
I think that's a lot of insider kind of baseball stuff that I don't think really matters. I think what really matters to Lori's point is in the district, it's a true swing district, and the issues of immigration, what we do with DACA.
Why doesn't Stanton just? Why isn't he out? Raising more money, doing more to go run for this? We're 2 months away from early ballots dropping in the primary.
I cannot answer that, and I know that it's a great concern inside City Hall with others who aspire to be mayor of Phoenix. Why he's hanging on as long as he is with his job.
Yeah,
I can't answer that.
Okay, let's move from Congress now. Let's talk about the big race here in Arizona right now, the Senate race. Lori, you wrote a column, interesting column. A lot of flip-flopping going on in this race, you said.
Footwear of the U.S. Senate race in Arizona, the flip-flop, yes. Yeah. First you had Martha McSally, who famously was for a bill that would have allowed Dreamers eventually to become citizenship. I think it was a 10-year path. And recently she actually went to the House and asked them for permission to take her name off of that because she is no longer for that 10-year thing. Now she only wants to give them, status for a few years at a time and no path to citizenship. So it's a total flip-flop to appeal to her party's right wing. And now you have Kyrsten Sinema on the other side who's doing the same thing. She, in 2015, had opposed the Iran nuclear deal, and now she's opposing President Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. So she was against it, and now she's against getting out of it, which is clearly a bid to encourage the left wing to get behind her candidacy.
Yeah, so what is going on here? You got the flip-flopping all over the place. Is this just something people are doing, posturing for their primaries, or what's going on?
Well, but the interesting thing to me is that Kyrsten doesn't really have a primary.
Well, yeah.
I mean, she does, but she doesn't. McSally, I kind of understand, because she's trying to become a Trumpster. But she has two other Trumpsters to compete with.
Right.
In her primary. So,
but that's a fatal problem for her, though, because if you go that far to the right, how do you then come back to the middle? Well, McSally's whole hope was in being able to appeal to that middle range of Arizona voters. I don't know how you come back.
Yeah.
And her district is also a swing district where she's been elected by being a more moderate position. So I think she stands out a little bit more for her political movement. She's really veering off way to the right, and I think it's reflected in the polling data, which shows Kyrsten beating any of the three Republicans.
And what is going to happen here? In this Republican primary, we still have three people in there: Joe Arpaio, Kelly Ward, running against McSally over there. I'm not seeing a lot from the McSally campaign right now.
No, I don't either. And but the sheriff isn't really campaigning, a lot either. But in the end, I got to tell you, I could still see the sheriff winning this.
My question is the sheriff really into this?
Just based on the name
I do. Into it. I think he just likes his phone to ring. You don't see him out there.
He's only raised a few $100,000, and this has got to raise $10 million for a sheriff's race. I don't think it's hard.
You've got to be out there pounding the pavement every day. One thing I'll say about Kelly Ward, she is out there every single day, all over the state. Her problem is that she's going to split that far right vote with Joe Arpaio, which I think still gives Martha McSally a path into that nomination.
But doesn't help McSally in the general election.
Not at all. She has not helped herself at all.
All right. So at the end of the day, you think it's going to be McSally coming out of this Republican primary?
Probably. Probably, but I could see Ward winning. I could also see Arpaio. It just depends upon what we see in the.
All right.
Where the surge is in the fall.
We'll wrap it up right there. That's all the time we have for Politics Unplugged this week. Be sure to join us next week. Good night.